It's the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined today by Brian Batko. We're going to talk about if the Steelers don't end up going with Aaron Rodgers, who will be their options available to them if they wanted to roll with someone else to start as their quarterback for 2025. We'll talk about that, how Rodgers might clash with Arthur Smith after his problems with Russell Wilson, and we take a look at the NFL rules changes being reviewed at NFL owners meetings this upcoming week. All here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Brian Batko. We're your Steelers writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, like Chipped Ham and Football that comes out every Tuesday with Brian Batko right here on the show. As always, today's episode is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Whether you're injured in an accident or you need help with workers' compensation, Edgar Snyder Associates has your back. Be sure to call them at 1-800-94-EDGAR. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, let's talk about this quarterback situation. Not necessarily just about Aaron Rodgers, because we've talked a lot about this. Russell Wilson's now with the Giants. Aaron Rodgers and Steelers seem like they're the only dance partners left for each other, unless the Vikings come back into play, all that stuff. But let's just assume Aaron Rodgers just doesn't choose Pittsburgh. I'm retiring, or I'm taking the year off, or I'm just not signing with you, Pittsburgh. I don't want to do it. What are the viable options the Steelers have at quarterback? Cam Hayward on his podcast brought up just rolling with Mason, but there are some older veterans still on the free agent market. Brian, would you be all for the Steelers trying to sign someone else that's out there, or do you think they should roll with Mason or even a rookie as their starter this year?
Well, I'm with Cam in that I'd be fine rolling with Mason as the starter in that event, but I think you still need a better backup than Skylar Thompson, certainly a more reliable backup than that guy. No offense to that guy, but it hasn't been pretty for him so far in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's viable to go into the season with those two as your top two. You know, you could have some backup plans, I suppose, as far as, a draft pick. But, I think ideally, assuming you're not taking one earlier than I think they should in this class, then, that guy's not going to be necessarily a top two depth chart person right away either. But I'd be okay with the Joe Flacco potentially as a backup. He's also running out of time to complete hitting for the cycle in the AFC North, so this could get him one step closer to the Ravens, Browns, Steelers, Bengals swing around the horn. Carson Wentz is still dangling out there for better or worse. Drew Lock, I'm kind of surprised he hasn't signed anywhere yet. I know he had that one good game last season with the Giants when the Giants did not want him to have a good game, hitting up Malik Neighbors to improve, or I guess not improve their draft positioning, improve their record, harm their draft positioning. So it's getting thin out there. Tyler Huntley is another one who, he knows the AFC North well, at least. He's been a backup before with the Ravens, but, they've gone in a different direction since. So, I guess like the real plan C would be trading for somebody like a Joe Milton or Malik Willis, or I wouldn't recommend this unless there was some sort of real salary being picked up by the other team. But I guess Kirk Cousins still wants to play somewhere other than Atlanta in 2025. I just think he can't be a starter anymore. He can't move anymore. It would be bad. But if the Falcons cut him, I don't know. He's going to want to be somewhere. I suppose backing up with Mason Rudolph's a more viable path to starter snaps than a lot of other teams would be.
That's the thing here, man. There's not many options for the Steelers to go to that's going to feel good. But that was always the point here, was that the Steelers, their options were very slim if they didn't keep Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or whatever, and they didn't. So now Aaron Rodgers or the field here. Joe Flacco would be interesting considering his AFC North. And like if you went with for a year, because again, we all know the Steelers' plan was never to whoever they got this year was never to be the long-term plan. They want a rookie quarterback that they can mold themselves, that can come into a system where an O-line is developed. They have playmakers around them. They have a defense that protects them, and that way they're not having to do too much coming in. They want that shot to be next year. They don't want it to be this year. So with that, they know that this is a short-term plan. We've seen all the reports that indicate Aaron Rodgers, the offer the Steelers have to him is just 1 year. It's a take it or leave it deal. It's not something that they're really pressing for. So if you're the Steelers, maybe you do just say, you know what? If Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to come through, here's Mason Rudolph. Mason, this is your year to be the starter, man. Make it happen. Live out your dreams. By the way, Joe Flacco will be sitting behind you, and maybe they'll draft Tyler Shuck to sit behind him, and that's your quarterback room for 2025. One thing that's been made though, Brian, is that like the constant turnover of the quarterback position. It's been now 3 straight years where it's been completely it's gone over complete overhauls where it's just looked different now. This seems to be the process, and we get it. Like, this is what happens when you lose your franchise quarterback. But what do you think this says about what the Steelers have to do or have to do differently about finding who their quarterback is for the long term? Or is this just a natural part of this process that they're going through?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more the latter. I mean, everybody wants to believe their team has a vision, knows exactly what they're doing. But let's be honest. I mean, I'm sure the Chiefs were confident in their convictions about Patrick Mahomes, but it's not like they knew for 100% certain that he was going to be arguably the second greatest quarterback of all time by 2025. So, yeah, I mean, these things are still kind of a roll of the dice. But, I think for the Steelers, one thing they haven't really tried yet as far as the succession planning type stuff is, it contradicts a little bit about what you just laid out there, Chris. Like, okay, we are thinking 2026 is seemingly a better quarterback class. You're going to have the draft pick ammunition most likely to maneuver to somebody that you want to get if you do the whole 9 yards scouting that quarterback group like you did a couple years ago with Kenny Pickett's class. And, that's all well and good, but I'd still hesitate towards saying, okay, even if you're dropping this guy in a nice soft place to land as far as his supporting cast, maybe there's something to be said for letting that guy wait and learn for a year. And if that's the case, who's he sitting behind and who's the buffer? Who's the bridge? Is it Mason Rudolph in year 2 of this deal? I guess that would really depend on how he fares this season or whether he gets to fare this season. If Aaron Rodgers is in the mix, is it a rookie that you take this year? I know you mentioned Tyler Shuck, who is going to be discussed a lot on the mock draft video tracker Sunday right here on the PG YouTube channel. Is it a Will Howard or Riley Leonard if they get on this roster and get a chance to see some game action for better or worse in 2025? I don't know. I mean, it's just they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants a little bit, and it's hard not to when you don't have a quarterback. You're playing whack-a-mole. You're like, okay, the first round pick who didn't work out, bonk. The veteran who didn't work out, bonk. The reclamation project, but like you just got to keep trying, I guess. But it's not a fun or happy place to be.
It's not a fun or happy place to be. It's why Steelers fans, I think, feel so down about everything right now. It's like you don't even have the prospect of that guy being the person that who it's going to be. Like at least when Kenny Pickett was around, even after his second year, when it was like, okay, well, we'll see what he has in year 3. There was always that hope that maybe he'll flip the switch. Maybe he'll figure it out. You don't even have that right now. And I mean, I guess there's some people out there that feel that Mason Rudolph has always been the guy and has just never been given a proper chance
to be the quarterback for the next decade till he's 38.
Exactly. Maybe there's people that really believe that, but I'm not one of those people. I think that Mason's become a fine NFL backup quarterback, and that's where he's at.
Kind of who he is. Yeah.
Exactly. So if the Steelers, they want to go get Joe Flacco, Tyler Huntley, one of these other guys that are out here, that'd be fine. But again, the whole point is the pickings are slim because the Steelers aren't trying to gun for it this year. You got to remember the patience is for next year. So
Desmond Ridder, if they sign Desmond Ridder, Arthur Smith might be like, you know what? The Stanford football head coaching job sounds pretty good right about now.
But
We're
let's
gonna
talk about
Arthur Smith. Yeah, next segment.
let's talk about Arthur Smith, because Aaron Rodgers, if he's to come to the Steelers, he's a guy that he wants to run his own show. He wants to have make the offense his, and we know that wasn't something that Arthur Smith was too keen about, or Russell Wilson doing. How will that be different? We'll talk about that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko, stick with us. We got more to discuss. But first, remind you, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Did you know they also do workers' compensation? Whether you've been hurt on the job, when you've been hurt on the job, who decides when you're better? Who decides when your treatment is over? And who decides when your benefits are over? The answer might surprise you. It's actually the insurance company's doctors. How does that make you feel? If the answer is not great, you got to call Edgar Snyder's today, because Edgar Snyder Associates are going to fight for the workers' comp rights that you deserve. Call them today at 1-800-94-EDGAR. That's 1-800-94-EDGAR to reach Edgar Snyder Associates to get the best workers' comp rights fight that you can in Pittsburgh. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. We're also brought to you by UFC Gym. Pittsburgh, are you ready to train like a champion? UFC Gym has everything for total body health under one roof. They have group classes from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to Zumba, personal training, cardio, weights, cryotherapy, infrared saunas, and more, all for an unbeatable price. Not sure where to begin? All members get a starter session with an expert coach to help map out your fitness plan. Your first visit is on us. Drop in with free parking at Market Square or the waterfront, and follow UFC Gym Pittsburgh on social media. Train different, feel unstoppable at UFC Gym. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, let's talk about this topic here, because this is something that I think some people might not put a whole lot of stock into, but it's something that I have my eye on. We know that from our reporting with Jerry Dulac and what he put out there, that Russell Wilson, was told to not, make changes late in the season, not call audibles, and that was a switch up from what they did earlier in the season when they scored a lot of points against the Bengals, and there was some, butting of heads between him and Arthur Smith, and that led to some of the reasons why Russell Wilson wasn't wanted back. So with that, though, the Steelers, if they were to sign Aaron Rodgers, he's a guy who wants his own system, wants his own thing, wants his own players. He pushed the Jets to go get guys from the Packers to bring them in and to make them part of their system. And at the end of the day, he forced out Robert Saleh and had his own way with a lot of things in New York. Now, granted, I don't think he's going to get that kind of power in Pittsburgh, but can you expect Arthur Smith to not butt heads with Aaron Rodgers in the same way he did with Russell Wilson, or is there something else that could happen there?
I think it's hard to say. I mean, we've talked on the show before about how it really didn't seem like Arthur Smith was ever on board with going from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. Obviously he was already on the staff and in place when the Steelers decided to go sign Russ in free agency. But man, if I had $1 for every time Arthur Smith reminded us he's not a head coach anymore and he doesn't have the same kind of power and say in personnel decisions, I'd be a rich man. So here's the thing, though, that maybe some people were discounting, Chris, and yes, it's been well covered at this point that Arthur Smith, it wasn't carte blanche for Russell Wilson. Maybe he lost some trust or confidence or faith in him with those pre-snap diagnoses. And he said at one point last season, hey, you're never going to send your quarterback up there with a Cheesecake Factory menu that's huge with every play in our playbook and say, go be Terry Bradshaw from the 70s and call what you want, tell us what you see and run the play. But I don't know, Aaron Rodgers, he might get the Cheesecake Factory menu. He might even get the senior citizen menu at his age. So, I do think that Arthur Smith might have a little bit more, perceived trust in Rodgers being able to do that. Maybe he will give him more leeway and freedom. And, the other thing too, Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson, I mean, I know there was the anecdote when things were going well about how they were spending long hours in the office together and FaceTiming each other's wives. Like, hey, I'm actually with Russ. I'm actually with Arthur. Like, we're getting work done, but they just they seem very different personally. Mm-hmm. And I've never covered Aaron Rodgers. I've covered Arthur Smith for a year now. They sort of seem like their personalities would vibe. I mean, they're both kind of dry sense of humor. Arthur is like borderline cynical sometimes. And in some of his press conferences. So maybe they would hit it off a little bit more than the always uber positive Russ and the Arthur Smith who, he kind of went through the grinder these last 3 years in Atlanta with the Falcons, and maybe doesn't have that always rosy outlook on things.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that could happen here is Arthur Smith, like you said, very different kind of personality than Russell Wilson. And I will say that, when Arthur Smith spoke highly of Justin Fields is very much a guy that's a lot more laid back and not as out there as Russell Wilson. Like, for example, during the season at one point, I was getting ready to make a trip to Ohio State to cover Pitt at Ohio State for basketball. And I stopped over at Justin Fields's locker and was just like, I just figured like, I'll just ask a little fun question. Like, hey, where do you go out in Columbus? Or what do you know? He's like, why would I know that? I was like, well, you went there. He's like, yeah, 5 years ago. And he's like, I haven't been back since. I'm like, Justin, I just saw you there for homecoming. And he's like, he looked up and he was like, huh, I was just there, wasn't I? And I was like, yeah, it's no big deal. I was just curious. He's like, oh yeah, but I don't ever go out around there. I'm like, okay, cool, thanks. Like, it was just that was it. But it was just very matter of fact, plainly. Like, it wasn't upset, wasn't excited. He was just like, yeah, But that's what I've always got from Justin Fields, and that's kind of what I feel with Arthur Smith. Rarely do I ever see him be excitable. When at least when he's talking to us and when we see him working. And I think maybe that's something that just did not jive well with Russell Wilson, who is always just. He wants to approach everything. He wants to put his fingerprints in things. He wants to just, hey, let's say the positive thing. Let's do the right thing. Even during the playoff losses, as they're getting whooped by the Ravens, you see him going to the bench after the like, come on, we can get this, guys. Let's go. And maybe that didn't vibe, and maybe that does vibe better with Aaron Rodgers. But who knows, man? Because Aaron Rodgers, he has so many different personalities at times that I don't know what he's going to bring to the table if he comes to the Steelers.
I think the peace of mind that Arthur Smith would have to some extent, Chris, is, in the Steelers, players don't really win the power struggle against the coaches ever. Now, we know that the Matt Canada firing did happen, and, I think that took a lot for Art Rooney II to sign off on, and, obviously Mike Tomlin loves his stability too with his staff. So that was kind of an outlier. I think Arthur Smith, assuming he signed a 3-year deal like most coordinators do with the Steelers, I don't think this would be a situation where it's like, hey, if it goes badly with Rodgers during this one season, you got to be worried. I mean, I think he'd still get another year to maybe draft that guy in 2026 and see how it goes. Yeah. But I mean, maybe he's at the point of his career where he's like, I want somebody who's going to kind of have a lot of hand signals and be super, super detailed and super dialed in and super high expectations, but not in the kind of always, like you said, excitable Russell Wilson way, right? Where I don't want to say there wasn't accountability, but like it was hard to imagine him really getting on anybody. And maybe Arthur Smith would like a kind of bad cop type of Aaron Rodgers to some degree. I know this is all speculation, but what else are we going to do? There's really no information out there while Aaron Rodgers takes his sweet time. So we're just trying to look at this thing from all perspectives and all angles. And, the relationship between play caller and quarterback is always crucial. And, I would hope that if the Steelers are pursuing this as heavily as they seem to be, that their offensive coordinator would be on board.
He needs to be, and it'll be curious to see how well these two mesh together, if again they even happen. Because there's also the possibility that it's just Mason Rudolph, and hey, we know Mason Rudolph, and he gets in where he fits in.
He'll be a go along to get along guy for sure, no matter what the circumstance is. And I had Brian Costello, the Jets beat writer from the New York Post, on Chip Tam and Football on Tuesday, and we talked a little bit about hey, were the Jets kind of smitten with Justin Fields because of, they interviewed Arthur Smith for a head coaching job after their season ended this year. They also talked to him a few years ago when he ended up with the Falcons and they ended up with Robert Saleh. And there was some reporting done that they would have been good to hire him as some sort of nebulous senior offensive assistant this year had he not gotten the job with the Steelers. So my point is, somebody high up in the Jets organization likes Arthur Smith. And that they keep kind of orbiting each other. And hey, if he wanted to take that interview with them, Aaron Rodgers was still in the equation for them at the time. Maybe he had decided, like, yeah, I'm good with doing the whole Rodgers thing, and if I get this head job, let's do it. So those are just some other things to consider there, and I guess we'll see how this all plays out, and where it goes from here, and whether this is whether 2025 will be yet another season of audible gate like we had with Matt Canada and Kenny Pickett, and then Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson. Granted, hey, this is maybe a topic for another day, and it's probably a topic we've covered many times, but I guess the common denominator here is Mike Tomlin and the agenda he sets from the very top.
Indeed, it makes me wonder. I still think the top priority for this year, with whoever the quarterback is for this offense, it needs to be the identity is figured out, where if you're going to get a rookie quarterback next year, that rookie quarterback is a puzzle piece fit into a system where the run game's going, and it's independent of needing that quarterback to be the driving force. If he ends up being the driving force like Jaden Daniels was for the Commanders, awesome, you hit a home run. But you need to be prepared for this rookie quarterback to come in, much like Ben Roethlisberger did. Ben Roethlisberger did not light it up at every turn during his rookie season. Now, they won all their games once he became a starter up until the AFC Championship game, but it wasn't with him dominating at every turn. It was often with the run game and the defense being a factor. And that's what the Steelers have to figure out, is they have to get those things going and have those things ready for whenever they want their quarterback of the future. So that'll be a big focus. We'll continue to cover things there, but we also got to talk about rule changes in the NFL. NFL owners meetings are coming up, and there's some major rule changes that could switch up how things operate in the NFL. We'll talk about those and give you our opinion on those next here on the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. But first, I remind you, this show is also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They're your mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them today for a free consultation. That's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. We're also brought to you by Moon Township Honda, where you can get your new Honda vehicle at 5802 University Boulevard in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, or visit their website at moonhonda.com. Here's a message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
We gave the all-electric Prologue EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, let's talk about some of these proposed rule changes. There's a lot of different ones, but we're going to focus on three bigger ones that I think everyone has been hearing about. There's a change in the potential kickoff rule that allows for onside kicks to happen whenever, and for kickoff after touchbacks, kickoffs go, or the touchbacks go to the 35-yard line, moving that up. There's the tush push being challenged, and a change in playoff seeding. But let's start with the playoff seeding, because I think that that's an interesting thing here that gets debated every year when a team that has a 12+ win record as a wild card team goes on the road and plays a division winner with a lesser record, and people wonder, oh, was that not fair to that team? You know, the Steelers felt that example when they lost to the 8-8 Broncos with the Tim Tebow game back in 2011. The Saints felt that when Marshawn Lynch did the Beastquake on them way back when. And of course, the Commanders ended up making it work, but they had to go on the road despite them having a better record than some of the teams that they faced. Brian, what say you about this potential rule change where when you get to the playoffs, division winners still make the playoffs, but the seeding in the playoffs and who gets the home game is determined by simply who had the better record and not who won the division?
I mean, I don't really have a strong feeling on it either way. I mean, I don't think it's like a must pass because of everything you just outlined. It's sort of cyclical. I mean, teams go through this from time to time. You know, we know there are going to be stronger divisions. There are going to be weaker divisions. I think the way that it's formatted currently, it at least keeps those divisional games and those traditional rivalries. They matter more, even if it is a year that the AFC South stinks or the NFC South is no good. So I think that's one benefit to keeping it. But on the flip side, I mean, I understand where the Lions are coming from. Right now, they're in a position of relative power where they are in a division where, yeah, it looks like the Lions, the Packers, the Vikings, maybe even the Bears coming along here with Caleb Williams are going to be good for a while. So it is kind of silly and arbitrary when you think of it that, all right, just because, the AFC South needs somebody to win it, the Colts or the Jaguars or the Texans get a home game in a year that TJ Yates is their starting quarterback in wild card weekend. So, I don't really have a true urgency to see them change that, but I get it. It's just kind of like, all right, if you're going to do that, then do you want to just get rid of divisions? Do you want to just get rid of conferences? Do you want to just have the top 14 teams by record get seeded and say the heck with it? I don't know. At what point do we still prioritize kind of the conventional, long-standing way the NFL has done things?
That's where I'm at, Brian. Like, I get that you feel some type of way because you had such a great season and it didn't win. Who cares? Win your division. That's the whole point of it. The divisions are there for a reason, to create rivalry, to promote regionality, and there's something to that. And a real reward for winning your division is hosting a playoff game. That's that. And also there's going to be times where the division winner might be a better team, but with not as good of a record because they played in such a competitive division where they had to beat up on each other all season long. I mean, look at the AFC North over the past few years, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens. And then when the Browns are competitive, those four teams are duking it out. That doesn't make them any lesser than the AFC East. If like say 1 year that the Bills won the division and like, I don't know, the Jets or the Patriots or who, they get in with an 11-win record because they got to sweep up on the Jets, on the two other teams in the AFC East, giving them more easier wins there. While the AFC North, the division winner is 10-7 because it's such a competitive division. Now, should the Dolphins, because they played in an easier division, get to host a playoff team? That won a much more hard fought division? I don't think so. I think that look, you can make things here or there. The system as it is right now, I think works just fine. If you win your division, you host a playoff game. If you don't, you got to go on the road and you got to handle it. That's just it's a bottom line for me that doesn't seem to be. I think people want to gripe about it, just like people want to gripe about overtime rules when they see a team lose. It happens, but I don't think that this is some great unfairness that goes upon teams that if you don't win your division, you don't get to host a playoff game unless you meet another non-division winner in the playoffs who has a lesser record than you, and that's just that.
It's kind of like the college football playoff debate always too, right? It's like, all right, if you expand it, then just inherently the regular season becomes less valuable because now you can't afford to lose a game or two that you used to not be able to. I almost think that's not as big of a concern in the NFL because there's always going to be interest in the regular season because of fantasy football, because of gambling. But yeah, I mean, certainly the results of a Week 18 Vikings-Lions game like the one we just saw would not be as significant as it was this past year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one rule. Let's talk about another rule here, the tush push. The tush push is something that everyone has seen at some point if you're watching football, because the Eagles popularized it. Other teams have tried it, not to as much success, but there's a talk about banning the tush push. Brian, I've had a take on this that I've professed before, but I want to give you a chance to see what are your thoughts here. Should they ban the tush push? Should they allow the tush push? Should they modify the tush push?
Again, I could go either way on this one too. That's why these things are so hotly debated, because there are good points on both sides of it. I lean toward keeping the tush push because as much as I do see the concerns about it's almost not a real football play. It kind of bastardizes the game to some extent, and you worry about linemen's knees with going down that low. And there is the aspect of the rule book that, yeah, you can't pull guys in because that can get kind of silly. So it'd be very easy to legislate pushing out of the game as well. It might be harder to actually execute ruling on that in a game, but at least if you have the legalese in there, the fine print, then maybe officials can dole that out a little bit better. But the reason why I'd be okay with keeping it is it's not the cheat code for everybody that it is for the Eagles. I mean, they've gotten so good at it. There are skill and athletic and physical related reasons why they're so good at it. The Bills are pretty good at it too, but hey, it's not like it was the be all end all for them in that Chiefs game last year in the playoffs. So I don't think it's as big of a deal to get it out of the game. But hey, if the NFL comes back or a team comes back with some conclusive findings about outsized impact of injuries because of the play, then okay, maybe I'll change my tune.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have about this is I do think the NFL has bent over backwards to make life easier for offenses and for expanding the rules to find ways to make it easier for offenses to score. And I think it'd be nice if they did something for the defense. And I'm not saying ban the tush push. My proposal is this. If you want to do a tush push, like how they have onside kicks, you got to declare it. You got to say, hey, we're doing a tush push. And there's none of this, might hike it with 10 seconds left, might hike it with 5 seconds left. You're hiking at a specific time where the officials count things down. The clock is stopped. You know, there's a 10-second runoff so that you don't get to like use it as a free timeout. And that way, there's a countdown: 3, 2, 1, go. That way, you won't have what the Commanders were doing in the NFC Championship game, where they were just jumping off sides because they're like, we can't stop this unless we just happen to guess their snap at the very right moment. It's just that simple. So to me, I just think like if you want to do something, but don't eliminate it altogether, but say, hey, Eagles, you want to do that tush push? Guess what? They're going to know exactly when and then it's an actual fair back and forth between the offense and defense and just who's stronger because you know when they're going, you don't get that one advantage. That's the only change I have. And I'm not that strong about it. If they keep the tush push, it's kind of the same thing before, right? It's just like, you know, it is what it is. Stop them. You know, don't let them get to a 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 where they can use that play so much. You know, but if they want to do something to help balance what has become an imbalanced league on offensive rules versus defensive rules, keep the tush push, but modify it so the defense has a fair fight at the line of scrimmage.
So you want to decentivize the tush or de-incentivize, whatever the word is. You want to just make it harder to pull off. Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, so there's that. And the last rule here, moving kickoffs after touchbacks to the 35-yard line, and then also allowing onside kicks to happen whenever again. Brian, obviously this is an incentive to try to get teams to put the ball in play more often for kickoffs, because if you're putting it in the end zone and they're starting at the 35, that's a pretty big, that's a lot different than starting at the 20.
I'm just so over the whole kickoff discussion. Like if we can't find a way to make this thing safe enough for the powers that be and entertaining enough for the other powers that be, then yeah, like, you know, yes, it would be an age-old football play that's now out of the game, but I don't think it's really going to affect anybody's enjoyment of football. I don't think there's going to be somebody out there that's like, I still love the sport, but I can't watch it anymore because the kickoff and the kick return was my favorite thing about it. I'm out.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think it's a minuscule problem. I think it's something that people kick around every year just to try to figure something else out. Because look, like kick returns, like we've seen several really cool moments. Devin Hester in the Super Bowl, you know, all the times Prime would do it. Deion Sanders would do it. The miracle in Music City, you know, where the Titans pulled it off. Like those are cool moments. But again, like, how much are you trying to bend over backwards?
We also saw cool moments of guys getting depleted going over the middle. And then at some point, the worm turned and we're like, yeah, actually, this is pretty bad for the health and safety of these guys. Right. So as much as we enjoyed these highlights for a long time, it's just not really feasible to keep doing this. And kickoffs and kick returns might be the same deal.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not that's one I'm definitely indifferent on. I'm like, do whatever you want. I hate kickoffs in the first place. They're the time where as a guy in the one thing I'll say is, as a guy in the press box, whenever I'm covering a game, I use the kickoffs to kind of get myself together and like finish that extra tweet about the drive that just happened.
No, see, I'm getting nachos. I'm getting some nachos, or I'm hitting the little boys' room during the kickoff. But one person who does want it to go back to the old way clearly is Cordero Patterson. He tweeted about that the other day, and I think anybody who watched him return kicks last year kind of knows that the new roles didn't really play into his hands. But kind of like, man, even if you do have a little bit more room to get up the top speed, Cordero, I think the top speed that you once had just isn't there anymore, man.
Yeah, Days is a little bit different. But hey, that's another episode here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko, thanks for tuning in. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, like Chip Hammond Football every Tuesday with Brian Batko. We're back here Monday on the North Shore Drive podcast. Will there be something different to say about the Steelers quarterback position? We'll talk about that then here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.